We begin with blowback, as aforementioned, while the U.S. tries to muscle countries and companies all over the world, including Huawei, into not doing business with Iran. The world seems to be pushing back. Normally, we would hear that our usual adversaries and critics and rivals, China, Russia, Iran itself, and others would be coming up with ways to get around U.S. sanctions. But the pushback is not coming from adversaries and critics or rivals. It's coming from our longtime allies, members of the European Union, who have come up with something that's called INSTEX. Stands for the Instrument in Support of Trade Exchanges. Instrument in Support of Trade Exchanges, INSTEX. In other words, they think countries ought to be able to trade with each other. Novel idea. Joining us now, News with Rick Sanchez, special correspondent Michelle Greenstein. I bet we could almost rename this INSTEX thing the Iran Workaround Plan. Right?
It's definitely been called stuff along those lines. This facilitates trade between Iran and EU country without sending any money across borders. So like you kind of just alluded to, it's designed to bypass U.S. sanctions. So it's essentially a barter arrangement, and it's not yet operative, but it makes this channel through which transactions can be enabled in the absence of SWIFT, which is the current dominant international payment system. Now, as some background, it was established in January and created as a reaction to the U.S. unilaterally withdrawing from the JCPOA. This is a withdrawal that not only reinstated sanctions on Iran, but also created new ones. So Iran, of course, threatened to pull out as well. So these EU signatories said, hey, no, we promise that we will find a way to keep doing business with Iran. And INSTEX is part of that effort to get Iran to remain in the JCPOA. Now, France, Germany, and the UK are to be managing this so-called clearinghouse, and it's also been made available to all other EU member states. Belgium, Denmark, Finland, the Netherlands, Norway, and Sweden have now signed on as of this week. And in a joint statement, they called this move a demonstration that Europeans are efforting to facilitate legitimate trade between Europe and Iran. Now, in terms of an international reaction, we had the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu calling this act European countries enabling a fanatic terrorist state. And we also had U.S. Vice President Mike Pence later this year saying that it's time for Europe to stop undermining sanctions against, quote, murderous revolutionary machines. But I think what's really important to note here, Rick, is that INSTEX is not actually as revolutionary as it may sound. For one thing, it's yet to enable any transactions, even though it's been operational since June. And also, INSTEX is only regarding what the Trump administration has not sanctioned. So it fails to cover exports of Iranian oil, gas, and petrochemicals. And it also, and this is really significant, does not cover Iranian imports of food or medicine. So we have to remember that sanctions on Iran really hurt ordinary people by and large, right? It's caused prices of imported medicines to soar. In fact, this August, 5 doctors from both Iran and the U.S. wrote this really great editorial in The Lancet showing that sanctions damaged Iran's universal healthcare system. And they say that Iran's now at a high risk of moving towards a severe situation for provision of health services with substantive impacts on mortality and morbidity. So the universal healthcare system has been sharply hit by these sanctions, mainly because it's now impossible to import these very key materials. And even Human Rights Watch, which has been criticized in the past for supporting a U.S. imperialist agenda, said that these U.S. sanctions, quote, pose a serious threat to Iranians' right to health and access to essential medicines. So many are calling INSTEX kind of more smoke and mirrors than an actual change in policy.
So, yeah, that's interesting. I was going to follow up by asking you just that. If it really doesn't help Iran in terms of being able to sell its oil or being able to feed its people, then who's it helping?
I mean, there's definitely a political upside here. It definitely gives the appearance that these EU countries want to restore, quote unquote, normal trade relations with Iran. But they're, of course, still complicit with the Trump administration's economic warfare. In fact, Iranian Foreign Minister Javad Zarif said, quote, for the past 5 months, Europe has been trying to give us credit in return for the sale of Iranian crude oil to make the country stay in the JCPOA. But it has not been able to do even this little job because it is not even allowed by its master.
To Rob Gupta now. He's a policy specialist at the Institute for China-American Studies. How about the point that Michelle was just making? A lot of people would look at this and say, what the United States, and in this case, by proxy, Bibi Netanyahu, are essentially saying, right, is we don't like them, and you have to then not like them. And to prove to us you don't like them, you got to make sure you don't trade with them. I mean, it sounds rudimentary, but that's pretty much the argument. Am I wrong?
You're absolutely correct. It's the fading days, the dying days of the unipolar moment, and trying to milk it as much as possible, and trying to see that you coerce and force allies, partners, or anybody in the international community.
But how significant is it that, I think we mentioned this earlier, guys, that this is not Russia pushing back. This is not Iran pushing back. This is not China or Pakistan pushing back. This is the European Union pushing back against the United States of America. How significant is that?
I think it's very, very significant. The EU has always been an actor which has worked which has sometimes worked ostentatiously, but always in tow with the US. And for the first time, we are seeing the the EU actively questioning itself as to where the heck are we going with the US. Some European countries have followed the US in many of the US's wars, and it's not really turned out well for them.
Right.
I think it's been a
Iraq,
long time. Yes.
Tony Blair.
Libya.
Egg on his face. Continue.
Yep. And so they've finally come around to thinking that maybe we are not being led necessarily in the best in the best direction. And now with populism and Trump's trade protectionism, there's been a real divergence between the two countries.
But there's a difference here too, and I think we would be foolhardy to not mention that these countries who are essentially going against U.S. policy are bound by a treaty to do that, right?
Oh, absolutely, particularly in the Iran deal. And here's the real irony of it. First of all, let me get to your point. The U.S. stepped aside from the six-party deal, which was hammered out with Iran, but the other members of that deal have obligations to Iran.
They signed a deal and they have to honor it, right?
Exactly. So it's fine to say Iran is not honoring aspects of it, but it's also you are not honoring aspects of it. And so, I mean, they have obligations and legal obligations.
Right.
And this has been consecrated as a UN Security Council resolution, international law. So, I mean, you just can't walk away from these things.
So they have an out. They can say to the United States, look, we'd like to be on your side on this thing, but we can't because, after all, we are signatories to this deal, this contract, and we have to honor it.
Yeah. And, you know, this is where the issue has gotten completely out of hand. The U.S. used to champion international law and ensure that parties would adhere to international law. Here, the U.S. steps away from international law, and when countries try to adhere to international law, the U.S. says, I will come and sanction you. That's the point.
There's a real irony there, right? Cat and mouse game. Now, let's talk a little bit about something I mentioned at the beginning of the newscast, Michelle, and that's this ban on Huawei, which, when you put that together on the sanctions against Iran and what's going on with Europe, I mean, it seems very strident, doesn't it?
Well, Mr. Gupta said something interesting. He said we're seeing the fading days of the unipolar moment, and it's no secret that China is a big contributor to this emerging multipolar world, right? And there are a number of front lines to this U.S.-led war on China, or the U.S. attempt to, maybe slow that rise down. One of those is the isolation of technology giants like Huawei, because this is kind of a sign of our tech domination, the Western dominance in the tech sector really being in decline. The Chinese economy is growing, especially in the technology sector. But what I want to ask you, since you've been watching this for a while, is given that the U.S. just passed this Hong Kong Human Rights and Democracy Act, right, which is sanctioning officials and also really protecting foreign influence in Hong Kong, is it possible that we're even going to see a substantial trade deal between the U.S. and China? Because even China now has pushed their own sanctions back. They're not sanctioning NGOs.
And as a caveat, it just got pushed back today. The Trump administration announced today, and the market went down, that this thing may not happen when we thought it was going to happen. Maybe not until after the election, they're saying now.
A substantial deal will not happen. That's absolutely certain. But I think on both sides, there's an incentive structure going to get something happening. And I think particularly from both sides, frankly, Trump, obviously, we know he needs to go into the election. Manufacturing is doing terrible. Many farmers have been hurt. He needs a deal. He's played his leverage card as long as he could, and now he has lost that leverage because he faces an election and he needs a deal. China knows that. China knows it has the leverage, but it also knows that it doesn't have the leverage for an unlimited time in case the man comes back as a president. So it's yanking the president a little bit right now, but it will try to sign on to it.
I never thought I would quote Sarah Palin, but I'm going to go ahead and quote Sarah Palin. Are you guys ready?
I'm so ready.
What you just suggested is that what we're going to end up is not a real deal between China and the United States, but rather lipstick on a pig.
All right, Shalom. First and foremost, I want to give all praise, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahushua, Bahashem, Rakakadash, Double honors to the apostles and elders of Great Millstone. Much respect to the brothers laboring in this truth and sincerity worldwide to wake up the elect of the children of Israel. Yeah, what you seen in your opening clips was what? Bible prophecy. You know, you got these nations, these EU nations, which is part of the beast system, starting to hate the whore that's sitting on the beast, right? You got this guy from Iran saying that that they supposed to be getting compensation for the oil that these EU companies or countries are getting, and they're not getting that compensation. Why? Because the master is not allowing them to use their own money, right? You know, these kings gave power to the whore, right? So this is the book of Habakkuk, chapter 2 and verse 1. I will stand upon my watch and set me upon the tower, and I will watch to see what he will say unto me, and what I shall answer when I am reproved. For the Most High answered me and said, write the vision and make it plain upon tables, that he may run that readeth it. For the vision is yet for an appointed time, but at the end it shall speak and not lie. Though it tarry, wait for it, because it will surely come. It will not tarry. Yeah, so this vision is speaking loud and clear right now. All right? You got these different nations now saying that they're strong. You know, that they don't need the U.S. dollar to facilitate trade. They don't need the U.S. embedding in their affairs. You know, you got Trump and Macron, the president of France, going back and forth with each other during the 70th anniversary of the NATO, right? All these things are what speaking now at the end, all right? Let's go to the book of Joel, chapter 3, start at verse 9. Because that's what's going on. The weak saying that they are strong, man. And they're tired of the whore. They tired of this bitch coming in and dictating what they can do in their own country. All right? At one point in time, America, this whore, old daughter of Babylon, Mystery Babylon, at one point in time, they was the only one who had the nuclear power, so they could really dictate and run the world as they see fit. But the way Yahweh Shah has set this up, he's giving these other weak countries their own sword, all right? And they're flexing their muscle. This is Joel 3 and 9. Proclaim ye this among the Gentiles, prepare war. Wake up the mighty men, let all the men of war draw near. Let them come up. Beat your plowshares into swords, and your pruning hooks into spears. Let the weak say, I am strong. Assemble yourselves, and come, all ye heathen, and gather yourselves together round about. Thither cause thy mighty ones to come down, O Most High. Right? Let the heathen be awakened and come to the valley of Jehoshaphat, the valley, the valley of decision. Yahweh Shaphat, right? Says, for there will I sit to judge all the heathen round about. And that's what's funny go on. You got these different countries hating the whore. Why? Because of the wine that they've been made to drink, man. You know, they've enacted the same policies that this whore has placed out. And now the people are mad. All right? This is Jeremiah 51 and 7. Salaki, let me start at verse 6. Flee out of the midst of Babylon and deliver every man his soul. Be not cut off in her iniquity. For this is the time of Yahweh Ba'ashem, Yahweh Shah, anger. he will render unto her a recompense. Yeah, man. All right. And that's what's going to happen. The recompense is coming swiftly to this whore. All right. Babylon have been a golden cup in Yahweh by Shah's hand that made all the earth drunken. The nations have drunken her wine. Therefore the nations are mad. Yeah, man. These nations are mad because they done drunk this Babylon juice. They done drunk this philosophy, this doctrine, right? Why? Because they were made to drink by Yahweh by Shah. All right? But the nations are mad. All right? Let's go back to Habakkuk. Habakkuk chapter 2, or Habakkuk, verse 4. Behold, his soul which is lifted up is not upright in him, but the just shall live by his faith. Yea, also, because he transgresseth by wine, he is a proud man, neither keepeth at home, who enlargeth his desire as hell, and is as death, and cannot be satisfied, but gather unto him all nations, and heapeth unto him all people. Yeah, let's read this again. Yea, because he transgresseth by wine, his philosophy, his doctrine, his so-called democratic system, right? He is a proud man, right? You know, ain't no more people in the world more proud than Edomites, man. Neither keepeth at home. Yeah, that's why they in these different countries giving tariffs here, tariffs there. If you buy any weapons from Russia, we put a tariffs on you. You know, they just put some tariffs on India, that's Slovakia, on Egypt for buying fighter jets from Russia. All right, they put tariffs on Turkey, which is supposed to be the EU NATO partner, right? Because they bought defense systems from who? Russia, man. Neither keepeth at home, who enlargeth his desire as hell, and is as death, and cannot be satisfied, but gathereth unto him all nations, and heapeth unto him all people. Shall not these take up a parable against him, and a taunting proverb against him, saying, Woe, and say, Woe to him that increaseth that which is not his? How long? And to him that ladeth himself with thick clay. Yeah, you go into the national debt, that word clay actually goes into the word debt. So you go into the national worldwide debt. Guess who has the most debt? It's the United States, man. All right. It says, shall they not rise up, rise up suddenly, that shall bite thee, and await that shall vex thee, and thou shalt be for booties unto them. Yeah, they're gonna be spoiled. Go into that word booties, just like you see your old pirate movies or whatnot. That means they're gonna take your resources, man. All right, because thou hast spoiled many nations, and this going into it, right? All the remnant of the people shall spoil thee, because of men's blood, and for the violence of the land, of the city, and of all that dwell therein, right? And these nations are mad, man. These nations are tired of the Babylon Jews. All right? This is Revelations 18. We'll start at the top. And after these, I saw another angel come down from heaven, having great power, and the earth was lightened with his glory. And he cried mightily with a strong voice, saying, Babylon, the great is fallen, and become the habitation of devils, and the hold of every foul spirit, and a cage of every unclean and hateful bird. Yeah, man, that's this place, man, where you can go get your sex change, man, and then it's okay. You know, they trying to say it's okay to be a transgender. You don't have to reveal that you done had a sex change, man. That's a unclean and every foul spirit that's here, man. All right. For all nations have drunk of the wine of the wrath of her fornication, and the kings of the earth have committed fornication with her, and the merchants of the earth are waxed rich through the abundance of her delicacy. Right? When you go back to that Iranian guy, he said, yeah, they're not paying because their master is not allowing them to pay, right? Verse 4, and I heard another voice from heaven saying, Come out of her, my people, that ye be not partakers of her sins, and that ye receive not of her plagues, right? For her sins have reached unto heaven, and the Most High have remembered her iniquities. Let's get a plague. You know, death and famine, all those things are coming to this place. Let's get one particular plague. All right? Zechariah 14 and 12. And this shall be the plague wherewith the Most High will smite all the people that are fought against Jerusalem. Now, Jerusalem is a people before it's a place. Their flesh shall consume away while they stand upon their feet, and their eyes shall consume away in their holes, and their tongue shall consume away in their mouth. So what's hot enough to do that, man? That's that thermonuclear missiles that these nations now saying that they are strong. Because everybody got a button there, man. All right? It ain't just Esau Edomites, man. All right? That's why these nations can say, have you become like us? Right? So this is Revelation 18 and 4 again. And I heard another voice from heaven saying, Come out of her, my people, that ye be not partakers of her sins, and that ye receive not of her plagues. For her sins have reached unto heaven, and the Most High have remembered her iniquities. Reward her even as she rewarded you, and double unto her, double according to her works. In the cup which she hath filled, fill to her double, right? And that's what's going to happen, man. Yahweh Shah is not playing with this place, man. So it behooves you, you know you're an Israelite. You know what's going on, man. You need to really offend less, all right? Verse 7, how much she have glorified herself and lived deliciously, so much torment and sorrow give her, for she saith in her heart, I sit a queen, and am no widow, and shall see no sorrow, right? That's what she say in her heart, man. She say in her mind, we are the biggest, best military in the world. There's no harm that can come to us. You go into that word queen, it literally means a whore. So this whore, this bitch that's sitting on the back of the beast, you know what I'm saying, that these kings have given their power to, and now the nations are mad. Guess what? That whore is going to be touched. Therefore her plague shall come in one day, death and mourning and famine, and she shall be utterly burned with fire. What's that fire? Those thermonuclear missiles. For strong is Yahweh Shah who judgeth her, and the kings of the earth who committed fornication and lived deliciously with her shall bewail her and lament for her when they shall see the smoke of her burning. Yeah, man, they're going to be sad because there's going to be no more trade here. They're not going to be able to do any more trade. Right? Let's go back to Habakkuk 2 and 9. It says, woe to him that covetous an evil covetousness to his house, that he may set his nest on high, that he may be delivered from the power of evil. Thou hast consulted shame to thy house by cutting off many people, and thou hast sinned against thy own soul. Yeah, Esau, you sinned against your own soul. But it's all the work of Yahweh Shah, and it's a beautiful work. All right? That's going to be it for the lesson. Lord willing, it's been edifying. I want to give all praise, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shah, Bahashem, Rakah Kadash. Double honors to the elders and apostles of Great Millstone. Much respect to the brothers laboring in this truth. and sincerity worldwide to wake up the elect of the children of Israel. Till the next time, I say shalom.